Hey guys, this is Frank Yetter, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
Hey, this is Rich Franklin.
What's up, everybody? This is Chris Lieben. This is Diego Sanchez. Randy Couture.
Alistair Overeem.
Hi, this is Stephen Bonner.
This is Don Fry.
Hey, I'm Phil, Mr. Wonderful Davis.
TJ Dillashaw.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Welcome to Submission Radio. It's a UFC 224 preview show, episode 159. Dennis Schrader here with Kasper Ozolowski, a fresh rested Kasper Ozolowski from a fun trip to Tasmania. Kas, before we get to the guests, you have to give us some highlights. What's going on in Tasmania now? What can you recommend?
Well, nothing now that me and my girlfriend have left. It's back to the nothingness that is Tasmania. No, I'm just kidding. Tasmania is beautiful, actually. It's really, really nice. I love Melbourne. I love Victoria. That's where we're based out of. It's the greatest city/country/state in the world. But I'll be honest, when you're driving through the rural parts of Victoria, it's pretty boring. It's pretty flat and nothing. Tasmania, on the other hand, almost like in New Zealand. Beautiful valleys, beautiful mountains, picturesque views, wineries as far as the eye can see.
Wow.
There's a pretty sexy food scene in Hobart. We were staying on this street called, I believe, Elizabeth Street, and we had like this awesome Vietnamese place that was like open till 2 in the morning. That was like across the road. We had like all these amazing restaurants. We had some Japanese food there, like a izakaya kind of place. And yeah, like cheese and wine. If you like that kind of stuff, go to Tasmania. There's this amazing winery called Devil's Corner. We had seafood chowder. We had fish croquettes. We had these crazy, well, not crazy, but just like delicious pizzas. And we sat over like a paddock. And we drank our wine. We ate our delicious food. And we just chilled, man. We just enjoyed the view. So I'm re-energized. That Tasmanian air has got me feeling pumped.
Well, you look pumped and you look re-energized. And by the way, you were sending me photos of your food, and it was just tough for me down here, I'll be honest. Seeing some of the stuff you were eating, it was very, very difficult. As you guys would have seen, the Celtics top is out today. I am all in, guys. I am jumping on this bandwagon. If people know I go for the Celtics, but I haven't really been that active this season. Doing amazingly against the 76ers, looking to go up against the Cavaliers. I know that LeBron James has been absolutely killing it. It's going to be a brutal series against them, but hey, I am all in. I think we can give the Cavaliers a good fight and get into the finals. So keeping an eye on that, Kasper. Very excited about that. Hoping there's a team that I go for that does well. Of course, I go for St. Kilda Football Club, which is one of the worst clubs here in the AFL. So someone make me proud, please. Someone make me proud. The Celtics
They
look like
need
they're
you.
doing
They need you, the Saints. If they're that bad, they need you as a supporting fan, right?
Well, they got Eric Bana, and if you have Eric Bana and he's wearing your tops in all the Hollywood movies and you can't do well, then what's left? What's left?
But how many, MMA media podcast hosts do they have? You know?
That's true. Next week, Eric Bana starts as an MMA media podcast. Eric.
You just know it.
But yeah, we've got an exciting time for all the Celtics fans right now. Let's get through the 76ers. Let's put it to LeBron. Let's double team him. Let's try and break him down, destroy him, and get into the finals. But Cass, before that all goes down, UFC 224 goes down this weekend. We have an exciting lineup of people on the show today, and a first-timer as well.
I'm pumped, man. We got Fernanda Prates of MMA Junkie. She's been doing great work for a very, very, very long time. We were lucky enough to meet Fernanda in 2016 UFC 200 International Fight Week. She does amazing work, and she's going to be making her first official Submission Radio debut on this week's episode via video, as are all our guests this week. So I'm very excited about that. Obviously, she's going to be in Brazil while we're talking to her, so we want to get the vibe from her. Things like Anderson Silva, the big stars in Brazil, the general feel for MMA. Amanda Nunes, what kind of star is she in Brazil? We know she's not a massive star in the States and here in Australia, but what is the feeling and the reception like in Brazil? Of course, Mackenzie Dern, so there is a lot to talk to her about. We've also got Kenny Florian returning to the program. It's always great to chat to him. I mean, there's a few things to chat about here, right? ESPN, this ESPN deal that the UFC announced last night, this morning. I mean, he's a Fox analyst. Is he going to be an ESPN analyst? What exactly is happening with that? Want to get his thoughts on these rumors about Nate Diaz and GSP potentially happening at UFC 227 in August. For those that don't know, GSP apparently is coming down to Melbourne and Sydney. Apparently Sydney on 7th of August, doing a talk, a night, an evening with GSP. They're the same guys that brought down Jean-Claude Van Damme. I mean, unless he gets on a plane hours after his fight, he's not making that. So either the fight's not happening or this talk's not happening. So
and the talk will definitely not happen if the fight gets confirmed.
100%.
I mean, there's just no doubt about it. Like, in case people think we're going, oh, He might not take the fight because he's got to talk
No.
down. Yeah, we're realistic. The talk, if the fight happens, but for now, it looks like he's doing the talk, or maybe a body double. I don't know.
He's lightly penciled in for the talk. Yeah, I mean, it's like, hey, here's a few $1 million to have a fight, or you can talk about yourself for what I'm assuming is a few $1,000s. I mean, it's an easy option. But then again, you never know. If the colitis is bad, maybe the talk is more realistic for GSP. So I don't know. I'm not sold 100% on Nate Diaz versus GSP happening. There's too many unknowns. Dana White saying it on UFC Unfiltered, a UFC platform. I don't know. Bit of fuckery going on, as Joe Rogan would say. We want to talk about all of that with Kenny Florian. Of course, get him to preview UFC 224 for us, a few cheeky predictions. And then, of course, Luke Thomas, the expert analyst that he is, going to be gracing us with some predictions, some analysis, and want to get his thoughts on, I mean, a lot of similar things as well. GSP Nate Diaz, the ESPN deal, and UFC 224, some of the key matchups. So it's a fun show, man. I'm pumped. It's a stacked little preview show.
That's right, man. It's a crazy time in MMA. There's a lot of exciting stuff to talk about. And adding to the lineup as well, one of our favorite guys out there in the MMA world, one of the hardest working guys out there, Tommy Toehold, is going to be on the show today telling us what we can get excited for when it comes to UFC 224. And this guy is hilarious, so make sure to stick around and listen to him as well. And before we get started, a quick reminder, jump on Twitter at SubmissionAUS, or Facebook. Give us a like, facebook.com/SubmissionRadio AUS. Check us out. Give us a like. Shoot us a message. We love talking to the fans. Give us a iTunes review, Cass. We haven't mentioned this in a while. James Lynch is probably laughing at home. They make fun of us, the MMA media, because we mentioned this in the intro of a lot of the episodes, but we haven't mentioned it in a while, so I'll quickly do it. Now, if you guys enjoy the show, leave us a cheeky review on iTunes, and we will read them out on the show. So if you got something funny to say and you enjoy Submission Radio, give us a nice review, and we will read it out on the show. We haven't done that in a little bit, so we'll be doing that soon. You have a little bit of time to get creative. We like the creative reviews, don't we, Cass? But we like the spicy ones, the sexy ones, the ones that really bring out a bit of humor. And love reading out your reviews here on the program. Love seeing what you guys think. So it's a bit of an exciting time for us whenever you guys leave something. Isn't that right, Cass?
Oh, absolutely. And I know sometimes people mention the fact that they're big Seinfeld fans, and of course, everything with us is a Seinfeld reference, is a Simpsons reference. We got a nice email the other day. Actually, I haven't responded to it yet, but a man by the name of Aidan Doyle, who emails us here and there, talking about how he liked the fact that we were dropping Conan references and Jordan Schlansky references, and how he's been watching all the Jordan Schlansky skits since the very beginning. But today, we're going to be having a bit of fun with our first guest, Fernanda Prates. Seinfeld. We want to get her top 3 Seinfeld episodes.
I love The Switch. The Switch is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
It's got that Ocean's 11 vibe to it. It's hard for me with Seinfeld because with Seinfeld just in general, I don't know about you, but it's just anytime you watch it, it doesn't feel old. And sometimes when you see one episode too many times, you'll be like, I don't know if I still love this one as much as the other one. It's like the one that you see, some of the ones that you see less often become your favorites because there's kind of a new wrinkle to it, I suppose. So it's hard. I think we might put her on the spot and see what her favorites are.
Yeah, just quickly, mention the Switch and the whole Ocean's 11 thing. There's this piece of music that's played a couple of times in Seinfeld. One is when Newman is seducing Kramer's mum, and the other one is, I think, when Jerry and Seinfeld are trying to come up with the scheme. I don't know whether it's they're writing the pilot, or I think it might actually be the Switch when they're trying to come up with a plan. And there's this like Ocean's 11 music. I once spent hours in front of my computer trying to find that piece of music. I mean, like, I wasted an entire night. By the time I went to sleep, the sun was up, and I couldn't find it. So there you go. That's my story. But that's such is my devotion to Seinfeld. So this is what it brings out in people. So I'm very curious what Fernanda has to say and what her top 3 episodes are. I wonder if she's racked her brain, racked her mind, similar to how we have in the past. But yeah, without further ado, enough rambling. Pretty sure she's on the line, and I believe you're about to introduce her.
All right, guys, our next guest does a great job of covering the happenings of MMA in Brazil for MMA Junkie, a talented interviewer and writer and fellow Seinfeld enthusiast. She joins us here for the first time, live from Brazil. I believe she's in a lobby. She was sitting on the floor, but she stood up for us because she's a very kind person. Ahead of UFC 224, Fernanda Prates, welcome. I can't believe I'm saying this for the first time to Submission Radio. Where have you been all our lives? Why haven't you been coming on our show? What's going on?
I've just been waiting. And at one point I gave up. I was like, this is never going to happen. And then, you know what they say, when you give up, it happens. And then I got the call. Actually, the DM.
We like to
Still
break
getting
people
over it.
down.
I'm very nervous.
We like to break people down, and then when they're at the lowest, we get them on submission ready. That's how we get the goss out of them. That's actually an old industry trick here in Australia. So thanks for joining us. Very excited to have you. Talk to us a little bit about the situation right now in Brazil when it comes to MMA, because we're always curious about the popularity, how it's going. We know there was some really big stars like Anderson Silva and Aldo and the likes, but where is the sport now, considering, those guys are a little bit out of the spotlight? Is it as popular as it's ever been?
That's an intense question.
Well, I'm an intense guy.
Well, as the voice of Brazil, I'm going to tell you, it's interesting. There has been a decrease, I guess, in popularity, just because I think it's natural. There was kind of like this giant boost at the time when we had Anderson, and I always say that the Brazilian sports culture, it's very specific in that we tend to like soccer and whatever else is winning, right? So if you have, so it's like volleyball had its time, tennis had its time, gymnastics had its time, and with Anderson, like we had that with MMA, we had this amazing champion, and I think the novelty wore off in a way, and you have a different type of attention now. It's not as big. Like before, I would have company to go watch the fights at a bar because people were like, okay, I'll watch whatever. They were interested. Now it's more like you're left with more actual fans, but not as big. And, the major guys are on their way out. So it takes a while for, the people coming up to be built, and you can see them doing that push with people like Mackenzie, Dern and things like that. But it's what Vitor did and what Anderson did, and even Aldo, who is not on his way out. But it's going to be a tough act to follow, I guess.
You say that the big guys are on their way out, but maybe not. I mean, Anderson Silva, we haven't heard too much from him since his recent USADA troubles, but he did do a bit of a soundbite, an interview with TMZ in February, saying that even if he was slapped with a 4-year suspension, he wouldn't retire. I mean, do you see that as being likely? You probably have a little bit more insight than we do. Do you see him potentially coming back and fighting the UFC and returning at 46, 47 years old?
What I mean by way out is that no longer at their athletic peak.
Sure,
right?
Sure.
Yeah, that's kind of like what I meant. I think Anderson as a competitor will probably return. His coaches think he will return. I don't know. He's kind of like one of those very unpredictable guys. Same as Vitor. Like Vitor says something completely out of the blue, and I'm like, nah, okay, that makes sense. So I don't know. I would think, I don't know if about the 4-year suspension, because that's a truckload of time. But I do feel like he's gonna want to return. I'm not saying that he's gonna retire. And although I think he's still got a couple of years left in him as well. And Lyoto is turning 40, and he's like still talking about getting the belt. So what I mean is that, it's a little bit different, the feel. It's more like you can see that there's a transition process happening. And for a while, we had all these really great guys peaking, and we have really good people coming up. I just don't think that maybe the casual fan is aware of who those people are just yet.
When I think about some of the fighters from Brazil, some of the old school legends, I think about a movie, and at the end of a movie, there's a little montage about what happened later on, and that's what we're seeing right now. Like Anderson Silva went on and failed a number of drug tests and said he'd come back at 50. Vitor Belfort got a haircut, and Lyoto Machida just kept losing, but he believed he'd keep winning the title. I'm curious though, Fernanda, from your perspective, with Anderson, we know at his peak, at his prime, when he was champion, he was a huge star in Brazil. How big of a celebrity was he at his prime in Brazil?
Oh, he was huge. He was, as far as sports stars go, we would say that it was like Neymar and him, like as a close second. Yeah, he was huge. He was like, he did a lot of commercials. Like Globo is by far our biggest channel, right? And Globo loved Anderson. Like they would get him, on camera whenever they could, which was not often because he's never been one to do like a ton of media. And, he was on this music video, like this really big popular star. He, like everybody knows who he is. It's the type of thing when you're like, Yeah, what do you do for a living? I cover MMA. What? What is that? That thing with people in cages, like fighting each other. Oh, Anderson Silva. So yeah, him and Vitor, they were what I would consider celebrities, not just sports celebrities.
What about now? Are people sort of put off by his recent performances? And I guess, you know, when people have USADA troubles, a lot of fans kind of turn on the fighters very quickly. Do you get that in Brazil, or you know, is it a little bit different there, where people sort of stick by fighters no matter what?
No, the thing with Anderson, I think the first time was huge. Like, I remember, because he was coming back from the injury, and the injury was something, dude, when he got hurt, the coverage, like, there was this guy, the biggest Sunday show, right? They had this guy planted at the door of the hospital giving updates every 5 minutes about, dude, it's like it's leg surgery, but okay. And then he didn't have updates, but he would go in live and update on us on whatever. So, and then after that, there was like the first issue, and that was like really widely reported. This time, I think people don't even know too much. Like, I get asked, like, so what's up with Anderson? Like, I haven't seen him in a while. Like, I don't think people
isn't that crazy?
aware.
He's a guy who sort of went from everybody caring and people wanting minute by minute updates while he's in surgery to people completely not even knowing what's going on with him in Brazil.
It is, but it isn't. Like, you kind of, I'm sure, like, if Fantástico stops right now and does this huge interview with him, like, update us on what's going on and whatever. Fantástico is it's the big Sunday show that I was telling you about.
Sure.
That's like our 60 minutes, sort of, but like.
What's it called? Fantástico?
Yeah, that's it.
Wow, what a name.
Yeah. And
that's going to be our new name going from next week. I'm sorry.
Fantástico. Okay,
Yeah.
you're probably going to have like some copyright infringement situation.
We have a whole team of lawyers here. Haven't you heard the show before?
Brazil's far away. It's okay.
You just have to like never come here, which why would you? It's
We'll be a bit of a Covington. We'll never make it down to Brazil.
But I'm pretty sure that, you know, it would still get attention, and obviously we still care. Like, whenever TMZ gets Anderson, because they're the only ones who can get Anderson these days, everybody's reporting on whatever TMZ got from him, even if it's pretty much nothing. So it's not that people don't care at all, but I think it's a reflection of the general, like, just not being that into it, you know. But when he fought, I remember when he returned and he fought Nick Diaz, like, it was the first time in a very long time that I saw people that interested. I was watching it at a bar, and I was working, actually. Okay. I don't go to bars at all. But that day I was working, and it was so packed, and it was like, usually like a few bars will have the fights on like in the background, and this one was one that I saw that everybody was like really paying attention. But yeah, I think it's just kind of like a reflection of the general, you know, people not being as crazy about it as they were for a couple of years.
Well, I mentioned Covington before. I want to get your thoughts. Are you disappointed that RDA and Covington is off the card? Do you agree with the decision by the UFC?
Sorry, Covington?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you disappointed that Colby Covington and RDA aren't fighting on UFC 224? We know they were supposed to fight, and then they got pulled because of security reasons and things like that. Are you disappointed that it's not on the card? And do you agree with the decision?
I don't get it. Like, security reasons. Like, I just, okay, who am I? Like, it's a person's, like, they have to decide. But, like, it's not, most people in Brazil don't give a fuck and don't know who Colby Covington is. Like, it's not like we're going to go threaten him with AKs or whatever.
So you're saying he needs to say more things, basically, right?
No, I'm not saying that at all. At all. I'm not. Please don't. We're good. No, I just think that it looked scary when he fought Damian, because it was just like a very heat at the moment type thing. Like, he was in the middle of the arena, you know, and their guy had just lost, and people got riled up, and he got them more riled up. I think it might have looked scary for him. Like, I'm not taking that away at all. But then, like, I don't think that, you know, he probably walked through the airport the next day quite normally. So it's like, I don't know, but, you know, I get why. I mean, if you can't avoid the trouble, just do. But not disappointed now. I mean, I like watching RDA fight, but it's just another card. I'm not personally attached to having that fight here, I guess.
So I guess essentially the death threats and things like that he was receiving potentially, there's not really a whole lot of warrant to that. And as a Brazilian MMA reporter, do you think any of the things that he said has really crossed the line, or do you sort of take it with a grain of salt and see it as well? He's just promoting it, and because it sounds like the people in Brazil didn't really take it that personally almost.
I put a lot of thought into Khabib Covington, like a lot more thought than I would like, I guess.
Yeah.
Because
he's doing his job.
Because I got asked that a lot, like the crossing the line thing. I think like whenever you're like talking about an entire nation and you're using like demeaning words, it's never like you're crossing the line. I don't think that's okay for a person to do. But then Chael Sonnen did that all the time.
Yeah.
He was like borderline racist, like often. And people didn't care because he was funny. Like, I think he was just more clever about it than Kobe usually is. And that's the thing, like, I can't tell, like, I don't know if this crazy MMA fan follows MMA on social media a lot, and then he takes personal offense at Khabib Covington and he wants to shoot him dead. Like, I can't say that that's not a thing that's gonna happen, but I don't know, like in my mind it seems a little bit like an overreaction that we would be more prone to killing an athlete just because she said some bad things about our country.
And I guess there's the whole entertainment aspect of it all. It's a little bit WWE-esque where you take it with a grain of salt. Talk to us about UFC 224, though. For you, where does this event rank compared to the other Brazilian events that have happened in the past? There's a few people out there sort of complaining that this card is a little bit weak. What are your thoughts on it?
I don't think it's weak at all. Like, if you think names for the Brazilian market, like you have Vitor, who's huge. You have Lyoto, who's huge. They're both ex-champions. They're both guys who, like, they made a big transition to the mainstream. So this is a fight with, like, a lot of casual fan appeal. And then you have Jacare, who's also a huge name in Brazil. In a good fight, it's not like a gimme fight. It's not like, oh, we want this guy to fight here, so we're just going to give him whoever. Like, it's a situation that makes sense, and it's a fight that makes sense with a guy that makes sense for Brazil. So that's another really good fight. Amanda, like, I don't think she's that huge here yet, but she has the potential to be, and obviously she earned her spot in the main event, and that's one step towards that. So I think people are criticizing the weight, I guess, of that fight a lot. It may have failed to gain, I don't know, like, I don't think people are as excited about that matchup. But I think it's a good fight, and with a good name for the Brazilian market as well. And then you have Mackenzie Dern to bring in the up and coming, like, interesting prospect and just try to build the new generation. I think the entire main card makes sense for us. I don't see it as a bad card. I just think that maybe not everything has title implications, but like, you have a title fight and you have a number one contender fight and you have a fight between two really big guys. You have Vitor's retirement fight. You have Mackenzie. Like, chill, we're good. Like, it could be way worse.
It could be way worse. It's interesting you bring up Amanda, because I guess this is one of the things we're always pondering with Amanda Nunes. Why don't more people care about her in America? Why don't more people care about her in Australia, overseas? Are you saying, and a lot of it we say is because, she doesn't speak the best English and she doesn't do that many interviews, but are you saying in Brazil she's in a similar situation as well, where she's not really as big of a star as she is in all these other markets as well?
That's the thing, that's the type of thing that's really hard to gauge, because, like, when it comes to women's MMA, I think Chris Cyborg is by far the biggest name here, but Chris Cyborg has been at that sport so long, though, and Chris Cyborg has the style of fighting that I think a lot of the casual fans can really understand and grasp. So there's, and here's the thing, like, Chris Cyborg did a lot of, when she was coming up, there was kind of like a novelty aspect, right, to the whole women's MMA thing. So she did a lot of interviews. She was the face that we got really used to seeing as, here's this interesting thing, women fighting in a cage. No, it's not like that anymore. So it's different. The type of exposure that she got is different than the type of exposure that Amanda got. So, and again, I think that people maybe not being as familiar with her as they are with Vitor or Lyoto, or it's just a reflection of these are people who haven't been following MMA that closely for the last 2 years. They're thinking MMA like 5 years ago. That's kind of like how my take on it.
Earlier in an interview, you brought up Vitor Belfort. He's a big star. I know you've interviewed him a number of times. You sort of know a little bit more about him than we do. So from your perspective, where is Vitor at right now? If you had to guess, what's sort of driving him to keep fighting and stick around in the UFC specifically, because it seemed like at one point he was going to leave. Where is he at mentally right now? What is, I suppose, his goal at this point in his career?
No, that's his final fight. Like, that's what he's telling everyone, like, ever.
But I think it was even an MMA Junkie where he's saying, if the UFC gives me a good contract and things like that. It just feels like there's always caveats whenever Vitor Belfort talks about retirement. He's like, this is my last fight ever.
Sure.
But hey, I might come back
For
later.
Sure.
It's like, what are you on about, Vitor?
Well, that's MMA retirement for you. Like, can we ever trust when a fighter retires? Actually, I asked him like dead on today. Like, that was my first question to him. I was like, well, you're getting this information firsthand. It's not up on MMA Junkie yet.
Oh, wow. So what did he say when you asked him about retirement?
He said, it's not retirement because I'm not getting paid afterward, but it is my final fight. That was his. But when I talked to him before, and that's probably the last story that you guys saw about him up on our website, he was saying that, well, yes, I'm treating this as my retirement from MMA, but like he won't shut the door entirely, meaning like if they throw a bunch of money at me and it makes sense, I'll come back. But I think he's giving himself that liberty of just being done with it as a fighter for now. But it is the final fight on his UFC contract anyway.
Okay. So he'll be fighting for another 5 years, basically.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing that pops up in most people's minds. Ryzen, Japan seems like a perfect place for him. If you had to sort of guess, do you think we see him pop up there? I mean, they'd throw a boatload of money for him to fight there.
Yeah, but like at the same time, like he cares. He's the type of guy who, like, he talks a lot about legacy and reputation and things like that. So I don't think he's just gonna, like, right now stop whatever it is that he's doing and just kind of like, well, they gave me all this money and I'm just gonna go fight in Japan, like it would have to be something that made sense for his image as well, because he's someone who's super aware of that, and I don't think that he's ever gonna stop being aware of that. So I don't think with him it's that simple. But like I said earlier too, like he's the type of guy where I'm not surprised with anything.
Yeah.
Like if he says, well, tomorrow, like I bought the UFC and now I run this shit, I'm gonna be like, okay, that makes sense. Hi. Like this is like I've come to expect. That's such a cliche, but yeah, the unexpected from him.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned Mackenzie Dern earlier on as one of the up-and-coming ones, and obviously she's on the main card, so this is very exciting for a lot of people. I'm curious to sort of get your gauge on what the Brazilian fans are sort of, I guess their reception to Dern. But before that, just wondering, do you think this is a bit of a risk? We know the UFC likes to kind of throw in prospects and get them fights either very quickly or with fighters that are sort of, maybe above their level. And this is a very, very quick turnaround. We saw she sort of struggled a little bit in the first fight. There was some adversity, and it seems like they just kind of thought, you know what, she's got that Brazilian connection. We'll throw her on this Brazil card. Do you think maybe this is a little bit of a mistake and it's too much too soon, especially with this whole situation with the MMA Lab as well? That probably, throws a wrench into her plans.
Yeah, honestly, like if it were anyone else, I'd be like, yeah, that's too fast. And she's doing so much media and like getting so much attention, and like she faces so much criticism too. Like if you see online, people are going on and on about her accent. Like that's how much they care about Mackenzie Dern, and which is to me like the most ridiculous MMA conversation, and that's saying a lot. But that's subject for another time. She's juggling so much that I would be like, yeah, that's not good. But then, like, when you talk to her about it and just the way she goes about things, like, it's not heavy. It's super light, It's like she seems to be able to handle all of this so well that I wouldn't be surprised if she went up there and did like this amazing performance. But I think it's not a bad matchup for her. I mean, I think the thinking was like, this is a person who has submission losses. This is a person who's good at submitting people. Let's just do this. But then there's this, other human who has different plans. I talked to Amanda today too, and she's super confident. And I don't know. I mean, yeah, I think that reasonably it's really fast, and I wouldn't do that to a prospect that you're trying to build up. But, I think if anybody can handle it, it's probably Mackenzie, just on pure grit and will. And that's, to me, is like her main thing right now. Like, obviously her technique is not all the way there, and she's fully aware of that too, which is important. But I think she wills her way into things a lot, and that's one of those cases too.
And it's interesting you mentioned how much media she's doing. I mean, she's a young fighter. She's obviously got an amazing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu career. She can speak the language. What if she wins here? Would you say she's almost UFC PR's dream? Like, this is a fighter that could really get behind and push to the stars, especially in Brazil, not just in America, but especially in Brazil.
I think that's the idea. And I mean, it's a good idea, because the thing with these guys, right, is that, and you guys know this, like, when they ask you to explain why a fighter who's a star is a star, like, we can explain it to an extent, but a lot of it is just that thing, that it factor, whatever you call it. Like, I don't know if you believe that, but I do. I think that some people they draw other people in, and I think she has that. So, that's certainly a good bat that they're having. And this is, like I said, we like champions and we like people who win at things. So she won a bunch in jiu-jitsu. Like, she can be sold as the super champion, and now she's still undefeated in MMA. So I feel like there are a lot of the elements there to make her a successful bat, but at the same time, it's like sometimes that's just the elements aren't enough. So we're gonna have to see. I think she needs to take a break after this one. She wants to take a break after this one. And if she wins, yeah, that's a solid bet. But, you have to – I really don't know what's going to be, because now she's still not a mainstream attraction around here,
All right, well, what a perfect way to segue. As we let you go, Fernanda, we got to get some fun predictions, if you'd be kind enough. So I guess we'll start with Mackenzie Dern and Amanda Bobby Cooper. Who are you leaning towards in this one? Are you expecting a Mackenzie Dern submission?
I am. I think she's not going to take risks with this one.
Yeah.
So, I think that if she were in that mindset that she was before, like, I want to prove that I can strike and this and that, like, that would have been risky. But it seems to me that she's not about to play around with this one. Like, she really wants to stick to her guns. So, yeah, I would guess a Dern submission here.
Jacare versus Kelvin Gastelum. I see Jacare sporting some hair in some of the countdown videos. Will this now hairier Jacare be able to do it, or are you going with Gastelum here?
He's like Samson. That's where he gains his strength from.
Well, but he was bald before, so it's like... Yeah,
what happened?
I'm always like so torn with Jacare, because I remember I was like kind of counting him out with Brunson.
Yeah.
And then like that happened. He had like the hellish camp for that. So this time things are good. He's in a good place. It's hard. It's a hard one, but I'm gonna go with Jacare here, because I think he knows that he needs to make this happen now, or it won't happen. So I'm just gonna go with Jacare here.
What about Lyoto Machida versus Vitor Belfort? Both legends, both guys. I mean, I was gonna say both close to retirement. Maybe not according to you. Maybe not according to either guy. Lyoto's sort of had some tough losses. Belfort's got some wins, but Lyoto's been fighting somewhat better competition. Who are you leaning towards here?
I'm leaning towards Lyoto.
Sure.
I think he's I think he's going to be intelligent about this one. And I think he's still a little bit more in tune with the cage, if you know what I'm saying. And he had that time off where he got to like heal up his body a little bit. I do think it's kind of like a quick turnaround for him because he's been having like a bunch of fights together, and he's gonna be 40 like late this month. Like, how does this?
He's trying to cram them all in.
Yeah, he is. I talked to him today, and that's pretty much like he's trying to be super active. I think I'm gonna go with him for this one. I think honestly, I think he's more invested in results at this point than Victor, and that may count on his favor. But I'm gonna go with Lyoto.
All right, well, let's talk about the main event. Amanda Nunes versus Raquel Pennington. Pennington spent a large amount of time away from the octagon. She's going to enemy territory. There's a lot of pressure on her. Is it too much for her, or do you think she can get the upset?
That's the thing with Raquel, right? Like that's the time when she really shines. You can see that she does not let that get to her, and you can see that she really wants it, and she's super gritty, and she's gonna bring the fight. But why am I picking all Brazilians? Okay, I don't know. There's internal bias. But she's like an overwhelming favorite, Amanda, for this one. And I think that's just because the intangibles, right? Like you said, Raquel is coming off this huge layoff. We have no idea which fighter is going to show up there. And Amanda, she's super focused. And she's just such a well-rounded fighter that I don't really see her, giving that much space to Raquel. And I think she's also very aware of what Raquel brings and how she needs to counter it. So I'm going to go with Amanda here.
All right, well, the most important part of the interview, forget about everything else. That was just the lead up into this question. You're a fellow Seinfeldian like us. People know from your Twitter page, you've got a great picture of Elaine as your cover photo. Obviously all the smart people like Seinfeld, there's no doubt in that. I was thinking about this question. I was debating it with myself and Casper, the best way to put it together. So what we decided is we wanted to ask you your top 3 Seinfeld episodes. Now, we understand there's so many episodes and it's so difficult that it's tough to rank. So just give us sort of three episodes that are sort of highlighted in your brain as your favorites.
And you don't have to rank them.
The face painter.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, Putty is like, whenever he shows up, like, I just love it.
Did you see he painted his face recently and went to a game?
I did not.
He went at the NHL, one of the NHL games of the Devils. He did the whole thing.
Oh, no. Oh, my God. Did he paint his belly, too?
Yeah, he had his shirt off and everything. He's in great shape.
Okay, I'll have to check it out. But the face painter, the soup Nazi. I'm just kidding. I would never pick
cliche.
The soup Nazi. And I almost picked the contest, too. But I also thought that was
also cliche, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm going to pick another cliche that's not as big of a cliche, I think. Bizarro Jerry.
Oh, yes.
Yes. A good one, yes.
Bizarro Jerry is amazing. And I haven't seen it that many times, I think. So it's like when I see it, there's still a little bit of magic in there.
Mm-hmm.
And the Bubble Boy.
The Bubble Boy.
What do you like about that episode?
Yeah, I struggle with the Bubble Boy. It frustrates me for some reason.
Really? 100%.
Yeah. Something annoys me about it.
The Bubble Boy is quite annoying.
About this. Yeah, he just annoys me. Yeah.
Mm.
I don't know.
I like it.
It is a highlight for people.
I think it has like crossover appeal. It's a kind of episode that if you don't follow
Mackenzie
it,
Dern of Seinfeld.
That's a good way of looking at it. I just think it's a kind of episode like if you don't follow or if it's not necessarily your type of type of humor, you're still gonna get it. But I think it's still maintain, and I think there's beauty in that too, and I think it still maintains the essence. And I think like I don't know, it's just I like George in it. He's just extra weird, I guess. I don't know. It just makes me. It's not about what's in here. It's about what's in here when it comes to Seinfeld, and this episode moves me.
Mm-hmm. Was it Moose or Moors? Moose or Moors? Awesome. I feel like next time we get you on the program, you'll have another top 3 because there's just so many episodes. So we'll have a think and we'll get you back. But guys, she mentioned it on the program. amazing coverage from UFC 224. Head over to MMA Junkie and check it out. A lot of exciting stuff coming up. Just quickly, a little taste, a little preview. You mentioned some of the media day interviews, Fernanda, but what are some of the things people need to look out for leading into the event from you?
It's not even the media day yet. We just had a few one-on-one chats.
Look at this.
The privileges of being part of MMA Junkie.
I'm just, it's not MMA Junkie, it's me. I'm just very, I'm kind of a big deal.
We noticed.
Why it's taken so long to get you on the show?
I don't know. I've been playing hard to get. But I think I got a lot of good stuff. I always like looking at people's, I don't know, like kind of being their therapist and just going into their psyches about their situations.
You're the Hannibal Lecter of MMA interviewers, basically.
It could be. It could be. Poor Kenny, he was shooting, and he was like, "Please keep your interviews under 20 minutes next time."
They love doing
need.
that. They love doing that. John Morgan once told us during an event when we were doing scrums, we better keep it short. He had this look in his eye. We weren't going to mess with him. They don't like to edit longer than a certain amount of time.
Keep it short and nobody gets hurt.
He's waiting for me to eat right now, by the way. So he's like texting me like meat, like repeatedly. But I think we got like Vitor is interesting. Like he was on fire. He was like inspired and talking about his legacy and like things in the cage and beyond. It's kind of a trip, but a good one. So I would really definitely look for that. And Raquel, I think, was really interesting. Like, she's the person coming into this as this huge underdog and just, like, all odds against her. And she has, like, a pretty interesting attitude about all of it. So that's also a good one. Just follow everything I do is great. So, like, just I can't even, like, pretend like I have that kind of confidence. But it should be interesting. I think we have a pretty interesting group of people here. Not just fighters, but, like, just the characters are interesting.
It's just going to be fascinating to see how the crowd's doing, all that. So, guys, make sure to follow Fernanda on Twitter @Nanda Prates _. Why is there an underscore? Is there another Prates out there? Someone trying to steal your identity? What's going on with the underscore?
She tweeted like once or twice.
Is she an egg?
Yeah, she's an egg. I haven't tried it in a while, but like last time I checked, because I check all the time because I really want to get rid of the fucking underscore. She's not a person. She's just over there taking up space.
It's probably a Russian Twitter sex bot doing nothing.
Got something to do with the FBI and Donald Trump. But guys, jump on Twitter, give her a follow, add an underscore at the end, Nanda Prates. Check out her amazing work and get onto this egg if you can. Try and get it off Twitter so she can get rid of that underscore. Fernanda, thank you so much for joining. I think this is pretty good. For the first time, thanks for joining us from a lobby floor and then standing up for us. I know your arm is killing you, but it means a lot. And say hi to Kenny for us.
It is.
And obviously, we'll be watching and sharing your coverage because it's always great. So thank you, Fernanda.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Hey, guys. It's Stipe Miocic, UFC heavyweight champion, and you listen to Submission Radio.
All right, guys. Our next guest is an incredibly busy man doing excellent work and analysis as the host of UFC Tonight. He's also a UFC commentator, co-host of the excellent Anik and Florian podcast, owner and trainer at Meraki BJJ in LA. Oh, and he's even back as a commentator for BattleBots, which is very exciting. A former multiple-time UFC challenger too. He is Kenny Florian. Kenny, welcome back to the show, man. How are you?
Thanks for having me, man.
Well, we're excited to have you on the show, Kenny. And before we even get into it, we want to get straight to the latest news that's been hitting the internet. There's new ESPN Plus deal for the UFC, which looks like it's going to be effective from January 2019. I mean, it's pretty recent, but have you seen the news? And what do you think about this new deal?
I have seen the news. I don't know much about it. I haven't been informed about it or anything like that. I just kind of know what I read very briefly, which is I guess ESPN's going to get 12 or 15 events for the year, and they're going to be using it with their digital streaming package, and so I guess ESPN will be confirmed to have some UFC fights. So it's pretty cool.
Do you know how this will affect you? Just because obviously you're doing hosting on UFC Tonight, and you're doing things like commentaries, and I'm assuming your contract may be with Fox via the UFC. So do you know if this sort of rolls over? Do you know if we'll be seeing Kenny Florian on ESPN, which would be a cool thing to see?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I used to work for ESPN back in 2000. I think 7 is when we started doing MMA Live, and did that up until the Fox deal. Who knows? You know, I don't know anything about that yet. But you know, I'm not sure. You know, the last I heard was that things were going to be split up between Fox and ESPN, and you know, for me, you know, the easy thing for me to say would be, well, whatever's going to benefit me is the deal that I like. But you know, honestly, I just hope that it's the best thing for the fans, for the fighters, and for the organization. As long as that is being achieved, then I'm all for the growth of the sport. And you know, people get uncomfortable with this sort of thing, and you know, we're used to seeing it on certain channels, certain media. When that gets kind of flipped upside down, people kind of freak out a little bit. I think I'm seeing a little bit of that freaking out, but we'll see. I think the UFC, you know, they know what they're doing, and hopefully they have the fans in mind.
And it will be one of those situations where we have to wait and see how it plays out and sort of judge it from there on. But I guess the big thing to ask is, everything's sort of moving towards digital platforms. We see the WWE network making a killing with their network, with everybody signing up and moving away from pay-per-view. Some of the criticism initially is ESPN Plus isn't really the ESPN that people get in their homes. It's an additional service that people have to pay $4.99 or something around that mark for. Do you think that's a deterrent from people to checking it out, the fact that it's that Plus service and not actual ESPN that people see on TV?
You know, it's possible. It's possible. You know, again, it's kind of one of those things that it takes getting used to. Anytime you see it switch from a different medium to a different channel, different network, whatever, you're going to get some challenges there. But you know, I think once people get used to it, I think they'll get they'll just get used to it. You know, we're creatures of habit. We don't like change for the most part. So we'll see how it works in actuality when the deal goes down in 2019.
Well, it's interesting because Dennis mentioned pay-per-view, and obviously the guy who was the king of pay-per-view. And obviously, the UFC will never move away from pay-per-view. It's their main source of revenue. But while we're talking about pay-per-view, you know, George St. Pierre, a guy that you were talking about recently, I believe, on the MMA Hour, you were speaking about how you would see him potentially coming back and fighting guys like, say, Conor McGregor, Khabib, you know, coming back just for those super fights. The latest rumors, Dana White has said on UFC Unfiltered that they're targeting GSP versus Nate Diaz for UFC 227. That'd be August 4th in Los Angeles. What did you think of the news when you saw that? Obviously, it's just rumors at this point, and would you expect that to be realistic for GSP to come back that soon, especially after his bout with colitis?
Oh, it's interesting. You know, I don't have the latest on George and how he's feeling. My understanding is that he has been training again. And my other understanding is that he really wants a big fight. Nate Diaz has confirmed himself as a big fight now. I think he's a big superstar. He's an excellent fighter. He's been fighting a very long time. I don't know if George is going to find that so interesting. I think he would probably want a rematch against Nick over Nate, and possibly fight, you know, someone like a Tyron Woodley. But I don't know. You know, I think that at this point in his career, George is looking for big challenges, new challenges. You know, the fact that he might be going down to 155 pounds sounds pretty interesting. It sounds like it is a new challenge. I haven't confirmed that with anyone in their camp. When I did bring it up to one of the coaches in that camp, they seemed to be surprised and unaware about that news. But again, who knows?
Which one did you bring up? The Nate Diaz fight?
What's that?
Which one did? Yeah. So
the Nate Diaz fight. So they weren't really aware of it, and again, who knows? Maybe they're out of the loop. But my understanding is that they were taken by surprise and they didn't really know that was the fight that George was targeting or even wanted.
Interesting, because when he was on the MMA Hour, you know, Nate Diaz was sort of, you know, asked as far as, you know, what do you think about that fight? And he didn't really seem that interested. He spoke about how he wants to do fights for, you know, that do something for his legacy. If he was to fight Nate, do you think that would do anything for George's legacy at this point, considering what he's done in the past?
Right. I mean, it's hard, right? Because, you know, George has done so many great things in this sport. He's had so many great challenges. The latest, of course, winning the 185-pound belt after being the champ for so many years at 170 pounds. So I don't know. I don't know if, and while Nate Diaz is a tremendous fighter, I don't know if that's the kind of thing that he looks back on and says, that was one of the highlights of my career. I don't know. And I don't think George is motivated by money at this point. He's motivated by the challenge. So whether Nate Diaz is that challenge that's going to get him to fight again, I'm not so sure.
And just for playing around and having a little bit of fun, how would you see that matchup play out, Nate Diaz versus GSP? Would you think it goes similarly to the fight that he had with Nick Diaz?
Yeah, listen, I think that Nate is a very good fighter. I think that both of those fighters would probably be more suited to fight at 170 pounds. George St. Pierre, that would be the first time that we've seen him at 155 pounds in his career, period, I believe. We know for sure he hasn't fought at 155 pounds in the UFC, but my understanding, he's always been a 170-pounder, and I don't know how he would perform at that weight. I also think Nate Diaz, his best weight class is probably 170 pounds in a lot of ways. I think he has more energy there. He's huge for a lightweight. For him to cut down a lightweight, he has to really do a lot. He's like 6'1", walks in the offseason probably around 190 pounds, and he's a guy who eats healthy all the time. So it's not like it's easy for him to get down to 155. If they do fight, I would think that it would probably be at 170 pounds, but who knows? Who knows? Or maybe a catch weight somewhere in between.
And if they did fight, is there someone that you'd back over the other? Do you think it's GSP winning here, just like he did with Nick Diaz, or do you think Nate might show something new and surprise people?
Well, certainly Nate Diaz is a guy who's always evolving. He's always training. He's always getting better. But GSP is as well. And I think that the kryptonite to some of the Diaz brothers' fights has been wrestlers, guys who can outposition them. Again, no matter what weight class, whether it's 155 pounds or 170, George will have a significant size and strength advantage. So that is a tough fight for Nate. I would have to favor George St. Pierre in that fight. He just doesn't make a heck of a lot of mistakes when he fights. He's very methodical. He's surrounded by excellent coaches. So that's a very smart team. I would have to give the advantage to George St. Pierre.
And I guess if the fight did happen, hypothetically, you sort of wonder how this relates to Conor McGregor. Is it a situation where the UFC is trying to set up, a massive fight, winner moves on to fight Conor McGregor? And do you think that would sort of take McGregor out of the lightweight title picture temporarily? Because, we do have a champion at the moment in Khabib, and this kind of frees Conor up to do other fights.
Yeah, I was thinking about this rumor the other day, and that was the justification in my mind for that fight happening. That would probably be the only justification for that fight happening, would be to pit those two together, and winner gets the money fight. So it does make sense. Not to say they wouldn't make a whole lot of money in that fight between GSP and Nate Diaz, but a fight against Conor McGregor certainly is a different level.
And we want to get your thoughts on UFC 224 quickly in just a second. But while we're talking about lightweight and what's going on, who would you like to see Khabib fight when he returns in November, December? People are still trying to figure out who the best candidate would be. What would be the ideal fight for Kenny Florian to see Khabib fight against?
Listen, the easy answer is Conor McGregor. I think Conor was the former champion at 155 pounds. They obviously have a history. It was unfortunate what happened with the Conor incident in New York. However, that's your tape right there to hype up their fight. Not to mention, the Ireland versus Russia thing, that would be interesting. Conor McGregor is one of the few strikers who I think can counter-strike and land a shot on Khabib as he comes in. We saw certain vulnerabilities in his last fight against Ali Quinta. We've seen those vulnerabilities before. People just kind of forget about them. And Khabib really hasn't had to rely on his striking very much. He gets to the clinch, he takes you down, he beats you up. Rinse, wash, repeat. Conor, I think would maybe find a way to land that knockout shot. Now, if he gets himself in the guard, I don't think Conor's going to be a threat to Khabib on the ground. But I do think he's a big-time threat on the feet, and Conor has the capability of knocking out anybody in and around his weight class.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely a fight that needs to happen at some point. Just looking over to this weekend, UFC 224, obviously Amanda Nunes and Raquel Pennington. One of the big stories here is Raquel Pennington, definitely a worthy title challenger, but she's coming off a massive 18-month layoff. I'm wondering, Kenny, I know in your career you never took any massive layoffs, but, as a fighter, if you were to be jumping into a title fight and be trying to overcome things like cage rust, how would you do it? What is it that fighters can do, and what is it that, Raquel could potentially have done sort of in this camp? And do you think it is realistic to try and shake off, cage rust when going up against someone like Amanda for potentially 5 rounds?
It's not ideal. I think very few fighters can take that time off and come back. And if they do, and if they are able to do it, typically it's fighters who have had a lot of experience. Dominic Cruz has been fighting for a very long time. He had a tremendous amount of experience. So for him to be able to come back like he did, or George St. Pierre to be able to come back like he did after those long layoffs, it's unusual and it's rare. And I think those guys are able to do it, first of all, because they're great fighters. But second of all, they have a lot of experience that they can recall, that they can call from in their previous octagon experience. Raquel Pennington doesn't quite have that kind of experience. She is mentally tough, though. So you definitely need to be mentally tough in order to have a long layoff and then come in and have a title fight right off the bat. Her back is against the wall here. I mean, Amanda Nunes, just that challenge alone is difficult, but coming off that long layoff just makes it that much more difficult.
It's going to be a very interesting matchup in the sense that Amanda's going to be performing in front of Brazil. She's had a little bit of trouble, Kenny, connecting with fans in the US, connecting with fans in Australia, connecting fans overseas outside of Brazil, possibly because she's got a little bit of, limited English, but also some people aren't really sold on her just yet as a household name. Do you think a big signature win in Brazil does something for her here?
I definitely think it helps her in Brazil, right? And again, I think it solidifies her that much more. Anytime you start to go on a win streak as a champion, people start to talk about it. For Amanda, it's difficult because, the responsibilities of a champion isn't just going out there and defending your belt. There are some other commitments that you have to do if you want to become a more well-known brand, if you want to have more viewership, if you want to have more sponsorship dollars coming in. But all that stuff takes time. In some ways, I respect Amanda Nunes more, the fact that she's like, you know what? I just want to focus on fighting. I want to go in there and fight. And when I'm done fighting, I go back to training again. And I'm not out in the public eye. But it can hurt her financially, and it can hurt the UFC in some ways. So I think, she knows what's best for her career. I don't think she's doing all the things outside of the cage that she really needs to. But, at the end of the day, it's about winning and getting her hand raised. And right now she's doing that. So she's doing a great job so far. I think this is another fight that's going to get her respect amongst the fan base worldwide. Just
on that, when you say you don't think she's doing some of the things outside of the cage that she needs to, what do you mean by that? You mean like some of the trash talk, like hyping up fights in certain ways?
No, not necessarily. No, not the trash talk. I'm not a huge fan of that, but I think it comes down to, let's say, for example, Ronda Rousey. I mean, she was on like every single magazine cover that was out there. She was doing talk shows. She was visiting here. She was visiting there. She was doing a lot of the PR. She was really becoming the face and becoming an ambassador for the UFC. For Amanda Nunes and her limited English, or, she's improving, it can be tough. It can be tough to be that face, to be that voice. I think she could certainly do that in Brazil. She does live in the U.S., which further complicates those things. So, I don't necessarily disagree with her choice. That's the thing. I think if her focus is on winning, she's doing all the right things.
And when it comes to who you think is going to win this one, do you think people are going to get a surprise Pennington coming back and defying the odds, or do you think it's just going to be what a lot of people expect, Amanda Nunes walking away with a win?
I like Raquel. She's very tough. I think she has a knack for making the fight scrappy. If she's able to do that and make it a brawl, that's going to be very important. When you're a technical fighter like Amanda Nunes, you got to get them to brawl. And that's what Raquel Pennington has to do. I don't think Amanda Nunes at this point in her career is going to succumb to that kind of strategy. I think she's going to play the smarter fight. I think that's what she needs to do. Nunes has the advantage on the feet and on the ground. She has more experience. it's going to be tough for Pennington to pull it off. I suspect that Amanda Nunes will probably win within 3 rounds.
In the co-main event, you got Jacare taking on Kelvin Gastelum. This is a fun matchup. It's sort of got old line versus new line written all over it.
Yeah.
I believe I heard you say on your podcast, great Anik and Florian podcast, that around the Whitaker fight, you sort of you saw Jacare looking a little bit different, maybe physically. I'm wondering if you sort of feel like after this Brunson win, this has sort of swayed you, or do you feel like maybe age is sort of starting to catch up with Jacare? And do you think that might play a factor in this fight at all?
Oh, listen, Jacare is getting older, and as we know, that does play a factor in your speed, and your mobility, and how you move, and how you can recover from injuries and all that stuff. And Jacare he had a torn pec. You could see it in the fight against Whitaker. He just was not looking the same. Not to say that's a big excuse, because at the end of the day, he took the fight, and Whitaker took advantage of that situation. But it's going to be tough, especially against a younger Kelvin Gastelum, who has legitimate knockout power. This is a tough fight for me. Kelvin seems to shine when the lights are brightest. This is certainly one of the biggest fights of his career at Jacare Souza. I think on the feet, Kelvin is the more technical fighter. I think he's a little bit more dangerous as well. When he's putting together combinations, I think he's a much better striker than Jacare. Does he hit harder than Jacare? I don't think so, though. I think Jacare has a little bit more power when he's kicking, when he's punching. He's not the most technical guy. He's not really setting you up with a whole lot of slick striking. But when he lands, you're in trouble. He also has tremendous takedowns, and, of course, on the ground, there's nobody better. He's the top 3. For me, he's in the top 3 grapplers ever to compete inside the octagon. So his pedigree definitely dictates that, and I think Jacare at this point is the favorite heading into this fight. That's who I'd have to pick if I have to make a pick, but I'm not sure it's a confident one.
Just to sort of elaborate on that, if you see Jacare winning, do you see it more sort of like a Chris Weidman situation where Chris Weidman ended up on top and he ended up being able to submit Kelvin Gastelum? And I guess, what do you think Kelvin would have to do in terms of improvements to sort of prevent that from happening? Is it as simple as, which obviously isn't simple, is it as simple as just keeping the fight standing and using his hand speed?
Well, you said it. That's exactly right. I would think that Jacare would find a way to keep it on the ground, take him to the ground. Him being the bigger fighter, I think he could really take advantage of that size difference against Kelvin Gastelum. Gastelum is pretty good on the ground when he gets on top. He's not great when he's on bottom, right? So I think that for Kelvin, people forget he's still a 170-pounder. I think he can be a champion. I don't think he can do it on 185 pounds, though. I think he's much better suited for 170 pounds. I think he's probably going to have a lot more energy at this weight class of 185, but size and strength-wise, Jacare is one of the larger middleweights in the division, so that's going to be tough for him. Yeah, in order for him to improve on his performance that he had against Weidman, I think he's got to stop the takedowns. That's crucial. He's got to get his head in the right place, keep it underneath the neck of Jacare so he can't really level change and attack those legs or attack that body lock, and move his feet extremely well. He's got to be able to sprawl, keep the fight in the center of the octagon where he can sprawl and he can move up against the cages where Jacare can hit some of those takedowns. If he can start to land those combinations and back Jacare up, I think Kelvin absolutely can win this fight and win it by finish.
You mentioned how Jacare is one of the best grapplers in the UFC. I have to quickly mention Mackenzie Dern, who's going to be competing against Amanda Cooper. Some interesting stuff happened. John Crouch asking him to leave the MMA Lab and train in California. It's a quick turnaround as well for Dern. Do you think things are happening a little bit too fast for her, or do you think we'll see another successful performance from her at UFC 224?
This isn't an easy fight. Amanda Bobby Cooper is a good striker. She's decent on the ground, certainly not at the level of Mackenzie Dern. I think, in the beginning of your career, I think you should stay active. Assuming you are healthy, you should stay as active as possible. I love what Israel Adesanya is doing as well. He's staying very active. He's going into the UFC and he's taking these fights back to back to back. If you are injury-free, this is exactly what you should be doing, assuming you're not having these crazy wars. I think you should stay as busy as possible. Why? First of all, you're going to get a better fan base. People are going to follow you more. This is what has made Cowboy Cerrone such a big star. Number two, you're going to get a ton of experience right off the bat. And I think the closer that turnaround is, I think the more comfortable you're going to be in the octagon, the more comfortable you're going to be on fight week, getting used to all those things. It's going to help you further on down the line as you get more experience. And I don't think they need to do that later on in their career, fight every 3 or 4 months. But as you start your career, that's a huge benefit. It's something that I think really benefited me to get comfortable fighting in the octagon.
So the official Kenny Florian prediction is Mackenzie Dern going over this weekend.
I think Mackenzie gets the submission win, yes.
All right, well, while we're talking about high-level grapplers, of course, we got to mention Kasai. And Kasai Pro 2 wasn't that long ago and featured a heap of big names such as Gary Tonin, Gordon Ryan, Yuri Simões, our very own Craig Jones. And that's obviously something that you're part of. What do you think it is about Kasai that attracts these big names and makes it possible to create such stacked events and cards?
Honestly, it's the passion. It's the passion of the people involved. Hollis Gracie, Richard Byrne. Those guys absolutely love jiu-jitsu, and they'll do whatever it takes to further the sport and get the best grapplers in the world to compete. And when you're a genuine fan, when you have a genuine love for the sport, these are the kind of tournaments, these are the kind of events, these are kind of matches that they'll be able to put together. So, the people involved have just been phenomenal, and they're learning every single time out. And I think that last event was proof that, already in only its second event, Kasai has established itself as one of the best grappling organizations in the world.
And I mean, there are some great moments in the event of Pro 2. For people that haven't seen it yet, what are a couple of matches that you recommend to go back and check out? What are a couple of favorite moments from the night for Kenny Florian?
Eddie Cummings against Canuto, I think, was just phenomenal. There wasn't a whole lot of action, but it was really interesting, a very technical battle. Eddie Cummings, one of the best leg attackers in the world, against Canuto, the guy who won it in the first Kasai grappling tournament. I thought was really fun to watch. That was really interesting. Craig Jones, I thought was phenomenal. Again, just continuing on his run. I think every single tournament, I think they're looking to step up their game and get better and better matches. And I think it's only going to get better from here on out. And people are hearing about Kasai and excited to compete for the organization as they should.
And the good thing is, you've also got Kasai Elite Grappling Championships. That's going to be taking place on June 16th. That's around the corner in New York College in Jamaica, Queens. It's going to be men's, women's gi, and no gi divisions. You can even qualify to compete at Kasai Pro 3 if you win at 170 pounds. That's one of the cool things about these amateur tournaments. In your opinion, what is it that makes sort of this New York's best amateur BJJ tournament? Because I feel like New York was there's a lot happening there, but it was a little bit left out. Now you've got Kasai there. It's kind of helped fill the void, and it's already kind of established itself as, the premier one in New York.
Listen, I think that it comes down to having more events, having more competitions, having more high-level opportunities for these grapplers to compete. I think in Southern California, we have a lot. We probably have more than any other place in the world besides Brazil. So I think the more events you have, the more ability you give these competitors to go out there and practice their craft. I think there's jiu-jitsu, and then there's the practice of competing itself. And I think when you have all these high-level events, it's motivating. These competitors want to get ready for these things. They're training very hard, and competing regularly is the most important thing.
And I know that you competed not that long ago. Would you ever be interested in jumping in and throwing in the hat at Kasai Pro? A bit of a surprise entrant, because we know you're still a beast on the mats.
I would love to. One thing I learned from that last event was that I can't be doing 100 different things at once.
Yeah, you do a million things. You're on daddy duty right now, right?
I know, and I wasn't able to train as much as I would like, and the other thing is I just got really sick leading up to it. So I just think that as soon as things start to calm down, I would love to do that. Right now, my focus has been just on teaching and getting my students to improve and be the best that they can. So that has been my passion right now. And once things slow down, once things maybe get to be a lot more comfortable or organized with my schedule, then I would love to compete again. That's another passion of mine, man. So that's the plan. I hope so.
Awesome. And by the way, how is your school going? Meraki BJJ in LA. Obviously, the first time you were on the show, it had just opened. We're a few months in now. How's that going?
Meraki has been amazing, man. We're located over in Brentwood, California, right on the Santa Monica line, and it's been amazing. The growth of our school has been tremendous. We have a lot of students now. It's been growing like crazy. We're creating just a beautiful community of students, of people that are really passionate about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and seeing their growth and how they're getting better and how they're improving as individuals is one of the most rewarding things I've done. My business partner, Jason Hunt, who's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Judo, has been doing a tremendous job as well. We just hired on Victor Silverio, who's one of the top Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts in his weight class in the world. He's now teaching full-time at Meraki as well. So
nice.
We're trying to create something very special. And I think in the future, I think we're going to be bringing some very good competitors. And, I think in September, it will be a year of us being open. And we have high hopes, and we're continuing to push and get our students ready and just make the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu community better and larger.
Well, that's awesome. We're happy for you, man. We hope to see, if they're willing to make the flight over to New York, some people will represent Meraki at some of the future Kasai Pros. And in the meantime, guys, don't forget to listen to the man on the excellent Anik and Florian podcast. Follow him on Twitter and Instagram at Kenny Florian. He does a million things, and one of those is, of course, BattleBots as well. He's back as the commentator, so you can look out for him there. And hopefully, you do great work on Fox. Hopefully, we see you on ESPN as well, Kenny. Everything seems to be panning out great for you. So thank you so much for your time. We really, really appreciate it. And we'll have you back on in the future, and good luck with everything.
I appreciate it. All the best, man.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Demetrius Johnson, the UFC flyweight champion of the world, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
Thank you so much for having me on. What's up, fight fans? I'm the moldy bread you already started eating before you noticed it was moldy of mixed martial arts, Tommy Toehold, and UFC 224 is nearly upon us. The women's bantamweight title is up for grabs. Raquel Pennington coming into Brazil to upset the dominant champion in Nunes. That is for sure the selling point on this card, but there's much more than just that title fight, and I'm gonna walk you through it right fucking now. Here are 3 other things to look for on this weekend's card. First up, Junior Albini returns. If you don't recognize the name, he was the diaper guy. They call him Baby. He's the guy who makes his fight shorts look like a diaper. The man truly does look like a giant baby, and thus the name. But do not let the diaper fool you. He is a bad motherfucker, and that's what's so awesome about it. The guy's got 12 finishes in his career, 6 subs and 6 KOs. Not a lot of heavyweights can brag about stats like that. He's just this bizarre and awesome thing to watch, and he's taking on Alexei Olenek, who I think has 748 fights. The man is made of chainsaws and truck commercials. He is as tough as they come. Watching a terrifying man fight a baby man who is also terrifying, I'm sorry, but that is just entertaining as fuck. You do not want to miss that fight. That alone should be enough to get you to watch this card, but I still have 2 other things. The second thing to look out for is Jacare, and you better look out for him before he gator rolls and chokes you to death. Jacare is a force of nature. He inspires awe like a really bad thunderstorm might. Watching him crawl into the ring with that completely emotionless expression and then just mercilessly destroying people is like watching a nature show where a gator eats a gazelle. Of course, he's fighting no gazelle though. He's fighting the dark horse of dark horses. I don't think you can ever count this dude out unless he pops for weed. Kelvin Gastelum is going to come into Brazil and try to shake up the world. Can you imagine if he beats Jacare in Brazil in devastating fashion? I seriously cannot wait for that fucking fight. I have goosebumps already. And finally, the third thing to watch out for, the biggest thing, the most important thing, is the last ride of Vitor Belfort. Maybe. The young dinosaur, the lion among lions. He has known many phases in his UFC career. There was young jacked Vitor, there was skinny Vitor, there was TRT Tor, and of course his current iteration dad bod Vitor. But no matter which version you look at, he has always been entertaining, and he is always going to throw at least one spinning head kick. Vitor is taking on Leona Machida, a fellow Brazilian. The emotions are going to be running so damn high here. Who will the crowd cheer for? Probably Vitor, but you never know. The Machida era came and went faster than a Francis and Ngannou uppercut, but the Dragon still has a lot of pride. He still plans to compete, and he has to beat Vitor Belfort here to get back on track. The fight in and of itself is compelling because I genuinely have no idea what's going to happen here. For all I know, Vitor's going to come out looking like the Super Shredder and kick Lyoto's head into the stands. But the more compelling part of this fight is what will happen afterwards. Will Vitor actually retire, or say he still has 3 or 4 fights left in him? Will he give a speech about Jesus, as well as best business practices? Will he pull out a cell phone and read something from it? Will he tell everyone that he's entered the Bellator Heavyweight Grand Prix? Will he spinning head kick Jimmy Smith? I truly do not know what's going to happen, but I can guarantee you that whatever happens will be the highlight of the night. A night that on paper doesn't maybe look like the greatest thing that's ever happened, but this is going to be one of those cards that looks kind of meh on paper, and then you decide, okay, I'll just watch the prelims, and then you hear the next day that it was the best card ever and you're pissed. Don't be that guy. This card has Unexpected Classic written all over it. Doesn't it, Vitor?
Bro, how people not gonna watch my last fight, okay? I do everything for these people, okay? I take TRT for the fans, not for me, okay? Not for Vitor. That was just me wanting to put on exciting fights for you guys. Don't turn you back on Vitor, guys. I spinning head kick you so hard, bro. Don't duck this card. Everybody duck this card. Everybody duck me my whole career, bro. Not this time, okay? Watch for the best show in the whole world. I go to Stanford, okay? I'm smarter than you. That mean I know better than you, okay? You need to watch me spinning head kick Lyoto Machida so hard, bro. This like a 50-50 chance the last time you see Vitor. Maybe like a 25% chance the last time you see Vitor. Maybe like 5% chance, guys. But you don't want to take that chance, okay? You're gonna be real sad if you miss my retirement.
I couldn't have said it any better. Fight fans, that is why you should be watching, and that's what you need to look out for at UFC 224. Submission Radio, you guys are truly the best. Thank you for having me back on the show. See you Saturday, fight fans!
This is Chael Sonnen, and you are listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys. Our next guest is one of the busiest men in MMA. He's known for his expert analysis on his many shows like the Monday Morning Analyst, Promotional Malpractice Live Chat. He also hosts the Luke Thomas Show Mondays through to Fridays at 3 p.m. Eastern on SiriusXM Rush 93. Oh, and you can also catch him on MMA Fighting, of course, the MMA Beat. Luke Thomas, welcome back to the program. What a resume that is. Thank you so much for joining us again, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm sorry it's been so long, but congrats on the, well, it's the same show, but it's now a little bit of a multimedia endeavor in more ways than it was before, right? So
we're gunning for this ESPN Plus deal, Luke. Let's be honest. Now that everyone's going streaming, we're thinking this is our future. Want to quickly touch on the toe. Dislocated toe. Didn't look very good on Twitter. We thought it was a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu injury. Talk us through this. How's it feeling and how did it happen?
Yeah, I got murdered for my terrible looking toes, but I don't care about that at all. I mean, I just all these dudes out there wasting money on pedicures. I feel sorry for you, but neither here nor there. Yeah, no, nothing. I just turned to pivot. That was it, and it popped right out. And it didn't. It was funny because it didn't hurt popping out. I was like, something. You knew something was up, but I wasn't in like excruciating pain or anything. And then I looked down, and the only way I can explain is if you look down, you can see the top of your foot, right?
Yeah.
I looked down, I could see the bottom of my toe.
Wow.
That's how dislocated it was. So there was actually a guy who had dislocated his fingers a couple of times. I tried to like flick it back in and that didn't work. And he explained to me, you have to like pull it out and then around and let it snap back into position. And that worked actually. But when it like snapped back in, it was rather painful.
Pain factor from 1 to 10, what would you rate it?
Ooh. I don't want to go too high, so I'll say a 7, but a solid 7.
Ooh.
Solid, right?
It's like the girls we used today, back when we were single.
Yeah, I don't want to go too high, but you know.
They were a solid 7. They weren't a weak 7, but they were solid.
That's a good thing. Anyway, it's it turned all the colors of the rainbow, but it's better now.
Wow. What's the recovery time frame like? When are you going to be back on the mats?
I don't know. I didn't go to a doctor, so I looked online. It's almost like every time you look online, it's like you have leprosy, HIV, cancer,
brain tumor.
Worse. I'll just say this: I can walk without limping today if I wear tennis shoes. So I'm gonna give it a go Saturday, but I'm gonna be real careful with it.
All right. Well, we're here to talk about UFC 224, but before we even get into it, Luke, we want to get your reaction to Dana White confirming brackets that GSP versus Nate Diaz is being targeted for UFC 227. Are you a believer in this? Is this just Dana White possibly saying something to put more pressure on the gentleman to possibly sign a deal? Is he trying to get the word out in the media to hype up a possible fight that's not going to happen? How did you take it?
Yeah, I took it as, I mean, there might be some pressure to the whole thing, but it's, from what I understand, what I've heard, some of the talks that I've been having with some folks, that there is an attempt to get it. Now, I don't think they're very close, and there could be a lot of reasons why they don't end up doing it. So I would certainly exercise some caution out there about assuming that it will happen. They are making attempts, but these things can be difficult and tricky and fall apart at any moment, and there's still a long way to go. So that's what I would say. I mean, the 155 thing is kind of intriguing, but I was talking about it on social media today. I don't really have much interest in it. I get it's a good idea for Nate Diaz, make a lot of money. I get it's a good idea for George St. Pierre, maybe, set himself up for some kind of effort in 3 weight classes, maybe even a title down the line. But and I don't think it's fair to say that Nate is the same fighter as Nick. But when you just look at what St. Pierre does and the way in which he can do it, hard if not virtually impossible to submit at this level anymore. I mean, maybe he's fallen off a cliff, but we'll see. And he did slug it out a little bit with Michael Bisping. Do I really think he's going to go do that with Nate Diaz, especially if he gets hairy? Probably not. Plus, it's only 3 rounds if it's non-title, right? Because you already have a title fight if it's on that August 4th card, which would ostensibly be the main event. It seems boring and not that interesting to me. Mileage will vary on this one, but it just looks like one of those fights that's being made for casual fans. So
yeah,
whatever.
I have to give credit to Tom Taylor of BJPen.com. He mentioned on Twitter how the hilarity of the situation. You got 2 guys that are notoriously very, very, very difficult to negotiate with. We're supposed to believe that a fight may materialize with them, so I mean, we'll see. And then there's this thing, apparently GSP is doing like a talk here. He's coming down to Melbourne and Sydney, night with GSP, and that's going to be like a couple of days after the event. So it's like, well, one of those things is not happening. Either the fight's not happening. I don't think GSP is going to jump on a plane hours after his fight to come down to Australia. As much as we'd love that, I don't think we're that special. I'm just wondering, if it does happen, hypothetically, what do you think the UFC's angle is? What is their goal? Is it a case where, the winner fights Conor McGregor? Is that what they're going for here? And do you think that sort of removes McGregor from the lightweight title picture for a little while? Because, we do have a champion right now, Khabib, and Khabib can fight guys like, Lee, Alvarez, Poirier, whoever, and Conor can have these big super fights in the meantime.
Yeah, my hunch about it is that, well, here's what's funny. Like, people who were defending it to me, they were like, well, it's good because it doesn't interfere with the flow of things, right? The rest of the division's not affected. It's a guy, Nate Diaz, who's not really all that active against a guy like St. Pierre, who's not all that active. He's not really a lightweight. So who cares if this fight takes place? And I think that's probably right. But then the same supporters will then look at you and say, yeah, but one of the great things about this fight is it sets up the winner can face Khabib or the winner can face Conor. It's like, well, which is it? Does it interfere or does it not interfere? So my sense is that it can be, it can be whatever they want it to be. Like, people are thinking about this like way too logically. Like, what does this set up? Whatever they want it to set up. Do they want to set up Conor versus Nate 3? You can do that, even in a loss, to be quite honest. Can they set up GSP versus Conor? They don't even need this to do that, but yes, it would assist in that effort. The point being is everyone's trying to use this to make sense of the future, and I don't think that's really the appropriate way to look at it. The appropriate way to look at it would be, this doesn't make sense other than as a star power meeting, which is the only kind of sense relevant here at all. And so going forward, they can use it. They might go in one direction more than another, but they can do whatever they want. And if the notion is the cohesion here is from star power, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it kind of feels like, they're thinking, what fight will get Nate Diaz to sign on the dotted line? What fight will get GSP to sign on the dotted line? And can we use these guys while we still have them in their sort of prime to draw as many fans as we can while they're still around? What can we throw at them? So absolutely agree with you there. Just quickly before we get UFC 224, want to get your quick thoughts on this ESPN Plus deal that looks like it's going to be kicking off in January 2019. Things still early, and we still have to see how it plays out to really judge it. But your initial feeling about this deal and where it's going?
I joined ESPN Plus when it first came out a couple of weeks or a month ago or so. And I just did the one-time subscription for $50 just to see what it would be like. And it was terrible. Now, understand, it was – well, the thing is, it was like MLS games, Major League Soccer, which is our local soccer league here, which is not good.
There's not a lot of premium content on there, right? It's kind of the side shows.
Sort of. I mean, they had, like, if you like MLS, they had some of the bigger cities that were involved in one of the games I was looking at. But, like, MLS is not, I mean, it's not good. So it was like, I don't know what to make of that. And then they do have top ranked stuff, but it's a library. They do have their series 30 for 30. That's okay. But the user interface was not very good. I mean, I'm comparing it to something else, which is very different, but it's an interface I really like YouTube TV. I don't know if you guys have YouTube TV in Australia yet. I really like it. I like what they're doing with it. I like how easy it is to use. It could be improved in ways too, but the user interface is very, very smart, intuitive, helpful. And again, they had just launched it, so you have to be a little bit forgiving of that. And obviously it makes sense. Why would you want to hire and sign with UFC? To drive subscribers to ESPN Plus. People have said this is the death of Fight Pass. I guess maybe, and depending on what you think of Fight Pass, for overseas customers, including those in Latin America, it's like the predominant, almost near exclusive way in which you get UFC content. So they're not going to get rid of it for that purpose. If you're in North America, you would be able to, it turns up from the press release, which, by the way, the wording of the press release was poor. The details were not explained well. There should have been a conference call today to explain this to reporters, and they didn't do that, which I thought was a total mistake. And then they put this out, and I'm a Fight Pass customer, which I will just mention. They were saying, you'll be able to get non-exclusive access through ESPN Plus to the library. Okay, but what about like EBI or Invicta or some of these other shows where it's not just an extra value add for the customer? The UFC needs Invicta around so they can poach their talent. That's what the relationship is about. I'm using the word poach here. I don't, it's the graduating system. Yeah. So my point being is, like, everyone's like, oh, Fight Pass will go away. I'm like, it can't. They need it for other purposes. So now we're going to have $10 a month on top of another $5. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. My only thought about this was, number one, it has nothing to do with whatever the TV deal they're going to end up signing. So let's see what that is. Looks like they're not going to lower the number of shows. I do think there could be a silver lining here, and maybe I'm being too generous, but my thought is, $50 for the whole year is what it'll get you for ESPN Plus, which is 15 shows. Well, $50 US is less than the cost of a single pay-per-view. So if they came to you and they said, not only are we going to get rid of one pay-per-view a year, we're going to get rid of 2 or 3. We're going to lower that number, which will free you up to get 15 shows for the price of for less than the price of one pay-per-view. I think that might earn them some goodwill, and frankly, it'd be better for the product because you could put really premium stuff in the right way on that pay-per-view package. So let's see what they do.
This is why we get you on, man. This kind of logic, these kind of calculations didn't occur to us at all, but I'm glad you brought that up. And obviously, like, here in Australia, like, a lot of people, like, I have Foxtel, which is the cable package and subscription. I also have Fight Pass as well, but there's a lot of people who don't have Foxtel, and they just purely rely on Fight Pass to watch all the, free events, the ones that you guys would be getting on Big Fox or FS1 or other things like that. So, yeah, you're absolutely right about how Fight Pass can't just go away. It has to stay. But moving on, looking at UFC 224 coming out this weekend, I'm wondering, Luke, is there a part of you that wishes we were going to be watching Colby Covington versus Rafael dos Anjos? Just for, I guess, the curiosity factor to see how Colby Covington would do in a country where pretty much everybody wants his head.
Yeah, he came and did one of my shows. I was doing a show next to the Barclays Center for UFC 223 on weigh-in day, Friday, right? Yeah. And he came by, and I was asking him, I was like, dude, and then this was off the air. Not that it was off the record, but just off the air.
Sure.
And I was asking him, I was like, what is it like for you these days? And he was like, pretty crazy. And I was like, I was like, what do people send to your direct messages? And he was like, a lot of death threats. And he tried to show me one. I didn't get a good chance to look at it, so I can't speak about it. But they're from Brazilians, as you can imagine. And he was telling me, like, very dangerous people in Brazil are really after him. So I know there's been some dispute about that fight being moved for that reason. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. But either way, it's probably a good idea. Yeah. But do I have a morbid curiosity to see what happens if confronted by the opposing fan base? Yeah, of course, man. Like, part of what he's doing is there's a cost to the gimmick, and when the bill comes due, you got to pay it. So, not that I'm wishing violence upon him exactly, but certainly, you get the idea. Watching that conflict play out in that kind of way would have been intriguing.
It would have been a fascinating fight to watch as well. But speaking of the event, I mean, Amanda Nunes versus Raquel Pennington in the main event, but I just want to get your thoughts on the actual bantamweight division, on the women's bantamweight division, because it looks like a lot of familiar names and faces are still kind of there, but some aren't really fighting at the moment. Obviously, Miesha Tate's currently pregnant and she's sort of retired. Where do you see the division at right now? For example, if Nunes does win and has a successful win here, a signature win here in Brazil, what do you think about the contenders that are to follow in that division?
Gosh, I don't know. That's a great question. I'll be honest, I haven't even thought about that. And in part, I haven't even thought about it because the only thing I've made my mind up, but in thinking about the next one, I spoke to Amanda last week, and I wasn't even thinking about, you interview a fighter during fight week. You guys know this. It's like, well, what about down the line? And they're always real hesitant to talk about that.
Yeah. Hashtag
Except
Tyron
about
Woodley.
Right. Hashtag Tyron Woodley. Except Cyborg, right?
Yeah.
She would talk about Cyborg, and so not a whole lot. Even then, it was pretty cagey. But with Cyborg out there making noise about potentially going to boxing and them trying to maximize in the WME era the biggest fights they can make, it's like I'll be honest, I haven't given it any thought, so I apologize. But we'll see what happens with Raquel Pennington. I think if she wins, it'll almost for sure be a rematch, even if it's a vicious KO or something like that. But I think if Amanda Nunes wins, I don't see how we get through 2018 with at least I just don't see how the next thing that people come up and say is, and especially if, let's say, Amanda wins in a really dominant fashion, I think everyone's just going to be saying to themselves, you got to fight Cyborg next, right? Fairly or unfairly, and whether or not that makes sense. And I know the Ultimate Fighter is going to have 145-pound division, but you're asking about contenders. In a sense, that's the only contendership that is on anyone's radar, for better or for worse. Certainly mine.
Well, yeah, and I mean, look, if you look at the division, you've got Ketlin Vieira, who has, put together a good record. She's beaten some good women, but at the same time, if you're WME IMG, if you're looking at it going, well, let's see, Ketlin Vieira, Chris Cyborg, it's an easy pick there, and that's kind of what we're angling at. Looking at the bantamweight division now, it just seems like it's pushing us closer and closer to Cyborg. Just quickly on Cyborg, what do you make of her wanting to sort of transition to boxing? This is something that she's been speaking about for a long time now. She got the boxing license. Do you think it ever happens realistically, and do you think it happens with her leaving the UFC, or do you think the UFC would try and sort of do it together, sort of in a partnership? Do you think Cyborg is worth it for them to sort of, obviously McGregor is completely in his own, tier when it comes to making exceptions. Do you think the UFC would ever make an exception for someone like Cyborg?
They probably would, especially if these reports about trying to get into business with Mikey Garcia carry weight. And I've actually talked to a lot of folks in the boxing world. They all seem pretty receptive to it, actually. It's kind of weird. So there could be something to that. I think at the end of the day, she's just looking for a really big paycheck, right? Which I think we can all understand why. And the best way to go about getting that, whether it's to get a bump in pay through the UFC and really not do that, or to actually go through with it and find an independent promoter to pay them, or to go through Zuffa Boxing and have that be some kind of way to structure the pay, whatever she can do to ultimately get some money that maybe she couldn't get this way, or could at least match it, or be, in some way to just to maximize a paycheck and attention. I think she wants to. You say, not you exactly, but there is these ever-present concerns that is this just some kind of marketing stunt? Maybe, but she fought in what I think was a lion fight. She went and fought Urena Bars and got smashed.
Yeah.
Right? She'll put her money where her mouth is. You know what I mean? I don't think this is a stunt in any way. I'm sure a part of it is the maximization of opportunity. That fight, I think, peaked with 900,000 or 1 million, the one with Cecilia Breckhouse over the weekend. So there's people watching. It would be kind of interesting. We all know that people want to see bizarre crossover fights that are often not very competitive. I think this would probably be something kind of similar, but I do take seriously Cyborg's willingness to go through with it 100%. She's already proven it, that she would do it for a lot less fanfare.
And she's interesting, Chris Cyborg, because who knows how much she's really going to stick around for as well. We know she's in a great position now. She's the champion, but she's spoken to us, and I'm sure she's spoken to you and a lot of other media members just about the fact that she wants to have a family and move on, and her time is limited. So it's interesting to see what's going to happen for her next. But just going back to this matchup, Luke, I mean, you mentioned it, Raquel Pennington, a super tough competitor. She's been away for a while, though, and she's going into enemy territory in Brazil to fight this fight, which I imagine would be pretty difficult as well, especially after such a long layoff from the octagon. How do you see this fight playing out? Who do you have here?
I kind of feel like it's Amanda Nunes' fight to lose, but I'll be curious to see how it goes. My hunch is that it probably won't be very exciting, but I can't be too sure about that. So what? Raquel Pennington hasn't fought since what? UFC 205, I believe, was her last one.
It's about 18 months.
Yeah. So, I mean, she's been, I think she retired Miesha Tate. If you go back and you watch these contests, what you sort of notice is she does a lot of things really well. She's a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none, but she does have some specialization within that. She's good about finding the neck in certain situations, strong, can grind on the cage if she has to, but really what she excels at is being on the outside, measuring that distance real naturally, having a sense of it, getting out of the way of punches, and then countering on the other side of things. That's really where she has some good ability. Amanda Nunes is quick, powerful, has a long reach, and I think she is going to make things difficult for Raquel in that sense. Raquel doesn't have really bouncy Frankie Edgar footwork. She likes to do just enough so that she can get out of the way and then plant her own feet and then go for the attack. So the question is, if she can make real successful use of that and begin to wear down Amanda Nunes, which we've seen is possible, hard to do, but possible, she can make great headway. On the other hand, if Amanda Nunes is really on fighting her kind of game, staying at the end of her punches, moving, and then landing, remember she hits very, very hard, I think it could go just the other way. So my sense is that skills win fights. The one who's more skilled of the two is Amanda Nunes. But it's not so far apart that if Raquel Pennington has a great night and really is just sharp for whatever reason, she can take it. I just don't think that's the likeliest outcome.
Almost the fact, and we're in the same boat. We're not expecting this to be, a massive fight, an instant classic. I almost feel like the fact that we're thinking that it's going to be like a Jimmy Manuwa Jan Blachowicz situation where all of a sudden we're all shocked. I'm just wondering, looking at Amanda, the questions have always been there surrounding her cardio. I'm just wondering if that last Valentina fight really did anything for you to answer those questions. And I guess, what are the biggest questions, if you have any left, sort of surrounding Amanda that you're hoping to have answered by the end of this weekend?
That's a good question. I mean, for me, the cardio issues, I never totally let them go, but I always believe that an individual effort. So, is it true that the cardio issues weren't real? Well, probably not. She might have cardio issues. However, are they so severe that if she had a great camp and she stayed healthy and she trained right, are they always going to make themselves visible? Well, maybe not that either, right? It's a bit of a gray middle area there. So I think in that Shevchenko fight, it was at just the right pace.
Yeah.
Where she didn't necessarily have to exert herself in that kind of a way. That's going to be another one of Pennington's, chores here. You got to make Nunes work. But that, of course, means you have to up the risk as well. So it's a real tight rope you have to walk there. So we'll see how she handles it. And the other part is, making Nunes work. Nunes is better than she used to be about not letting herself get pulled into those kinds of fights too. She's a lot more judicious with her offense as well. So do I think that her cardio is, that we were just all imagining things and it was strictly a function of the sinusitis? I'm sure that was real. I have no doubt that was real. 100% believer. But there might also be something to be said that she doesn't have Darren Elkins cardio or something either. I do think though she can be fine for Saturday.
I want to touch on the Legends showcase, which is Vitor Belfort versus Lyoto Machida. I have this thing that I do, Luke. I look through my old programs and I look at the fighters on those programs and I always think, oh, what happened to that guy? What happened to that guy? And you kind of look through it. And a lot of times, these guys don't have the best, I suppose, exit from the UFC. It's a bunch of losses or, it's a bunch of brutal knockouts. A lot of these headlining guys aren't around like they used to be. These guys are still in the UFC, but Machida hasn't looked the same. Vitor Belfort hasn't really looked the same since, TRT went out the window. What are you expecting from this fight? Because I'm a little bit worried that it might be a little bit tough for some fans to watch, especially if they're big fans of Lyoto Machida.
Ooh. I actually see it maybe the other way a little bit. I still think that Vitor Belfort in the first 3 minutes is very competitive. In the first 5, less so, but that's still a dangerous window. It's by the time you reach the second round that most of that goes out the window, especially if you have an ability to take it to the ground, which Machida doesn't often use, but could if he really wanted to. Both guys don't have the same ability to take a shot that they used to, but I think Machida's a little more compromised in that particular department. And of course, I don't think he has in that first 3 minutes the same kind of hand speed and reaction time that he used to. So I would say like I've been saying since Vitor has become the latest iteration of himself, which is that those first 3 minutes are very, very dangerous for anybody in that division. And I truly mean that. The first 5, a little bit less so, but still. And then after that, it's everybody's fight to have who's, reasonably at that level. I just think, his time has come, and I hope that's not particularly controversial for your audience, but my sense is that if early on Machida is engaging but slightly resistant too, like you can't do nothing but be very careful, his fight to lose, to be quite honest with you.
I agree with you 100%. If I'm backing anyone here, I'm backing Lyoto Machida to win this fight. In the co-main event, you got another guy who's essentially a Brazilian legend. You've got Jacare taking on Kelvin Gastelum. I mean, looking at the matchup and sort of recent history, Gastelum obviously got choked out by Chris Weidman. Jacare is even more of a monster on the ground. What adjustments do you think Gastelum has to make in order to avoid another situation like that? And is this sort of, an even bigger test for him because of those stakes?
Man, this is the best fight on the card, if you ask me. And Jacare Souza, I've gotten things wrong a few times. I thought fighters were done. And sometimes you get, you look at BJ Penn, that Yair Rodriguez fight, and you're like, well, maybe he's probably done. But then you look at, I've counted out Arlovsky too many times, and I counted out Jacare too many times. Jacare, I know he didn't have a couple of good runs there, but whatever it was that was holding him back, yes, he is a little bit longer in the tooth, but he looked phenomenal against Derek Brunson in that rematch, not merely because he landed a nice shot, but because you could just tell from the first fight, even if the second one went a little bit longer, he just had more sophisticated attacks. His ground speaks for itself. He's always been one of the better wrestlers from BJJ in MMA, right? And so for me, it's like, I think he can hang with Gastelum on the feet, and I think he's better than him on the ground. He's better. That's not saying a whole lot. He's better than just about everybody on the ground. My point being is, Gastelum's way to win this is I think he's got to do damage early. I do think he's got better boxing. I do think he has better hand speed. I think his hand speed surprises a lot of people, and he has to stay off the fence, and he has got to keep moving, and he has got to find a way to not surrender that first round. He sometimes is a bit of a slow starter and then builds. Not so much in the case of the Chris Weidman fight. It went the other direction. But I'm just thinking out loud here. If I'm Kelvin Gastelum, I am working on clinch breaking, footwork, the whole nine. And if you can let your boxing do the work for you, he can absolutely win this contest.
Now, if Gastelum wins here and wins dominantly, what do you think it does for him? Does it set him up for a potential title shot next against the winner of Robert Whittaker or Yoel Romero?
Ooh, that's a good one. So that's a tough one because the Chris Weidman fight was kind of one of those fights where you look at it and you say to yourself, well, he was just so heavy on top. But then he beat the former champion, Michael Bisping, right? So he got back on the winning. I mean, if you beat Michael Bisping and you beat Jacare, it's possible. I don't know what the rankings are. I try not to pay too much attention to them, so there might be a hierarchy issue there.
There's really nobody else. I think I know Gastelum's like ranked number 5, I think. And then in there you've got Weidman, you've got Romero, I think Jacare's there, I think Rockhold's still there, and then you got Whittaker. So if you got Whittaker and Romero, Rockhold's seemingly going to 205, Weidman, we don't really know when he's coming back. There's not really a lot of other people. But I guess the good thing is Gastelum, if they do go that route, that's a really exciting fight. Gastelum Whittaker or Gastelum Romero.
Sure.
Just quickly, do you think, because I think when he lost to Weidman, a lot of people kind of thought, man, this guy just isn't really cut out for 185. Do you think beating a guy like Jacare, along with maybe getting him a title shot, kind of solidifies that, all right, Gastelum is, a legit 185-pound contender, if not even a future potential champion?
If he shows things in this fight that he's improved on that were weaknesses in the Weidman fight. Now, Weidman is not Jacare. Jacare is not Weidman, but as I mentioned before, Jacare obviously has super dangerous attacks from Turtle, can attack the back. He's got good wrestling. He's athletic still. And so if Gastelum finds himself in that same space where he's hand fighting, he's in Turtle, he's trying to get to his base, he's trying to create separation, and he can really effectively do it. Again, that's not saying he could do that against Weidman again, but it would show that against a very capable fighter, very, very talented fighter of that division, he at least has shown some kind of real progress because he just wasn't really able to do hardly anything to Chris Weidman. And whatever differences there might be between Weidman and Jacare, if you can totally stop what Jacare does, it just tells you that there's absolute progress being made. So I guess we'll have to see what happens in the fight, what kind of challenges he faces. But if he can show that not only can he keep his footwork, but even when Jacare finds a way to get him down, he can get back up, no problems. Hey, you're cooking with gas at that point.
Sure. And Luke, really appreciate your time. Just quickly, as we let you go, just want to get your thoughts on Mackenzie Dern versus Amanda Bobby Cooper. Specifically, before we even talk about the matchup, just, I guess, the fact that John Crouch at the MMA Lab asked, or as Mackenzie Dern said, invited her to leave the team. Just wondering what your thoughts are on that, because she sort of spoke about how lifestyle is an important thing for her. She sometimes doesn't really like to go to the gym the next day after a training session. She likes to go to the beach and do things like that. Do you think that's kind of an indication, I guess, of, what John Crouch maybe saw in her commitment and I guess his confidence in, her ability to improve while representing the MMA Lab? And, do you think this is the kind of commitment that will work for her, I guess, if she is to, reach the highest points of her MMA career?
I find this story fascinating, in part because it could be nothing, in part it could be a super canary in the coal mine, right?
Yeah.
Really hard to know. So you have to be very careful with the analysis, so I will do my best. There's a way to look at this, and it's to say, hey, maybe she didn't like being in Arizona, and that affected her enthusiasm about the regularity of training or what the training should look like, or just complicated things. And being on the West Coast now at Black House, you saw the embedded. She was training with Bubba Jenkins, formerly of Bellator, but a Division I national champion, right? That can do some good things for her. So maybe the change of pace will be great. And this is just one of those things where it's like, look, we love you. If you're going to stay and live in Arizona or be here all the time, we can say you're a member of the lab, but if you're not going to do that, we just don't feel comfortable putting the MMA Lab as an association with you. Not out of disrespect, just, you got to spend enough time here for that to make sense. That could be a totally innocuous and accurate explanation for what's happening. The only thing that stood out to me, though, I got a little bit of that. Again, on my radio show, what I said was I wasn't going to call it a red flag, but I was going to call it like their spidey sense tingling.
Yeah.
Was when she said she got invited to leave. How often do you hear, when was the last time you heard about someone being invited to leave from the MMA Lab, or really any team?
Yeah.
That's a little unusual, right? And then when asked, she didn't even know what the reason was.
Yeah.
Something about that doesn't feel right. I don't know what that is. Again, could be, and I want to be 100% clear if I haven't already been. I am speculating, but that's just extremely unusual. You just don't hear things like that. And when you combine that with, fairly or unfairly, her progress in the wrestling department and how it's been a little bit not as fast as you thought it might be, you have to wonder, maybe there's something to this notion of, as you put it before, maybe there's a commitment issue, maybe there's a diligence issue, who knows? So look, here's what I would say. I don't think her next opponent is really going to tell us a whole lot either, in part because there was no space between her last fight. Even if she fixed everything, there just hasn't been enough time to really make a ton of progress. So I wouldn't even look at this one necessarily as some kind of major demonstration, win or lose. I want to be very clear about that.
Sure.
But I do think this is something to follow down the line. Let's see how things change for her in Southern California, what kind of progress she makes.
And just quickly, your prediction on that fight. Do you believe we'll see a big win from her over at UFC 224?
Big win, I don't know. Again, I think some of her issues that were raised in UFC 222 were real. Her wrestling it needs a ton of work. Obviously on the ground, forget it. She's better than everybody. And on the feet, she's made progress. If you watched her old fights, she's definitely a lot better in that department than she used to be, but still such a long way to go. She sort of reminds me of a women's Wilson Hayes in a way, right? Like super athletic and good on the ground. And he's got better wrestling, so that's not quite fair. But I just mean on the feet where they had these lingering stand-up issues. And we'll see how that comparison bears out over time. I might retract it. All I'm pointing out is, look, I think she has enough skills here to win. Skills win fights, as I said before. But it's the long-term projection. Let's see what this conversation looks like in a year's time.
All right, man. Well, look, we've taken up enough of your time. Look, really, really appreciate you jumping on and helping us analyze and break down things as only you can. Of course, make sure to follow the man on Twitter at L Thomas News. Of course, the man has a bunch of shows. The Monday Morning Analyst, Promotional Malpractice Live Chat, which is great because you can be a part of it and put your questions in there. I believe the hashtag is ChatRappers. And of course, the man has his own show named after himself. That's the dream right there. The Luke Thomas Show on Sirius XM Rush, 93 Monday to Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. So if you're in the States and lucky enough, you can listen to that. And as always, Luke, really appreciate you jumping on, man. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Luke.
Thank
you,
guys.
Get better, my friend. Get better. Take care.
I will.
And there he is, Luke Thomas. Hopefully that toe gets better, Casper, because, he is a bit of a beast. We know he loves his jiu-jitsu, and I just don't like the idea of my Luke Thomas walking everywhere in tennis shoes. To me, I feel like it's just something that he wouldn't be all four. So I know he's got a great, he's a practical guy. He likes to be comfortable, but I hope his toe gets better and he can get rid of those tennis shoes and wear something else sometime soon.
Yeah, for sure. Tennis shoes are for the tennis courts only. But there you go, guys. Another show in the bag, episode 159. Jesus, how have we made it this far? UFC 224 preview show in the books. Give us your predictions in the comment section below. We always love reading them. We always do read them. And now, if you see a little love heart, a little submission rate of love heart, that means that, I don't know, I guess it's like the new age thumbs up. That means we love your comment, basically. That's us showing you love. And we're always happy to interact with you guys in the comment section, respond, chat about anything, about fights, about whatever. You can DM us on Twitter as well, @SubmissionAUS. Send us your predictions. We're always happy to chat. And you can even email us, info@submissionradio.com. We can chat through email. So, massive thank you to you guys for listening. Also, massive thank you to all our guests. Fernanda Prates, really, really happy that we got her on the show finally for the first time. She made her debut. Kenny Florian back on the show. A lot of great analysis, a lot of expert opinions there. And, of course, Tommy Toehold bringing a lot of fun. And then, of course, Luke Thomas just a few seconds ago, giving us his expert analysis and opinion. So, I'm pumped, man. I'm excited for UFC 224. Is it a stacked, amazing card? No, it is a bit of a bridging pay-per-view.
It destroys everyone's hearts just as we're building up the outro.
But there's quality. There's quality there, you know. Gastelum versus Jacare. I'm excited. I'm excited to see how Dern does after such a quick turnaround. I'm excited to see if Raquel Pennington, she is Rocky, right? That is her nickname. Can she come full circle and be the ultimate Rocky story? Because what bigger Rocky story would it be to come back after a 17-month, 18-month layoff, a broken leg, and to come into Brazil, into enemy territory, and beat Amanda Nunes? There's a lot of curiosity factors there. So it's going to be fun. I'm excited to look forward to this pay-per-view and watch it this weekend.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, it's been a while since we've had a card because it's been a bit of a break. So it's nice to get started with this one. I'm going to go and have a look in the Submission Radio warehouse to see if we can find Luke Thomas a pair of Submission Radio thongs. And for those in America, it's not underwear. They're the flip-flops that you wear on the beach. So I'm going to go do that. You guys have a great week, and we'll be back with another episode of Submission Radio for you guys next week. Take care.